Matt Schaff of DraftSharks.com here to run you through a Dynasty Superflex rookie mock draft. With me, as usual, are my pals Jared Smola and Shane Hallam, and we're welcoming in a guest today to fill out our foursome. That's a little golf term just for Jared's sake. Jacob Gibbs does fantasy content over at CBS Sports. Jared, you actually first turned me on to Jacob for the high-value stat tidbits that he posts regularly on X. You can follow him there, by the way, at JAGibbs_23. Very good follow. One of my favorite follows on there, because since finding out about you on there, Jacob, I see that you do just post really good stat tidbits throughout the season and also prospect analysis surrounding the NFL draft. I know that you also supply that kind of analysis in the Fantasy Football Today newsletter. So, Jacob, thanks for joining us today, first off, and why don't you tell our people a little bit more about you and some of your fantasy background?
Thanks, Matt. Just stoked to be here. I love recording with Jared. Jared's one of my favorite Twitter follows, and I've not met you or Shane before, so this is cool to make some new friends. I know you guys do great work over at Draft Shark. So yeah, I'm at JAGibbs_23 on Twitter. And then if you Google like Jacob Gibbs FFT newsletter, that's Fantasy Football Today, CBS's fantasy podcast, you can find that. It's free. I send it out during the off season, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and during the season, it's hitting your inbox 6 days a week. It's a lot. I don't know if you aren't into reading, then maybe just stick with the X. But yeah, there's a lot of reading on X too, honestly. But yeah, prospect videos, all that good stuff. It's just a great time right now. A great time to be a sports fan. I'm going to a Thunder game tomorrow, and I'm going to a Wolves game next week. We've got NFL draft. Like, I've been going to lots of Royals games. Like, we were talking before the show, like we're all in like 5-10 drafts right now. Like, it's just such a good time, man.
Jacob, are you implying at the moment that there are sports besides football? Did I hear you correctly?
That's right. Basketball, man. I'm psyched for these hoops games.
Like I said, we're going to run through a 3-round rookie mock draft. We're happy to have you along with us, Jacob. I've set up a manual board on DraftSharks.com to keep track of all the action for those of you who are watching us on YouTube right now. If you're listening to the audio version instead, I expect you to pull the car over right now so you can keep track with pen and paper. I'll give you a second to do that. All right. So if I wanted to just practice this myself, I could take the board that you're looking at on YouTube right now and switch over to mock draft mode and run through a real practice on my own, make my picks and let the computer make the rest of the picks for me and just, practice to really get ready for my league's rookie draft. For our purposes today, we're going to keep it in manual mode so that I can put all the picks on the board so we can talk about why each person is making those selections. It's a super flex league. 12 teams, common lineup settings, PPR scoring. Stick around after the draft, by the way, because each of us is going to highlight a sleeper going outside the first 3 rounds. I'm going to kick this off because I think the top pick is pretty boring this year, guys. Ashton Jeanty is the first pick in really any format. Super flex, we usually start with a quarterback. This year it's Ashton Jeanty just because of how strong a running back candidate he is, how strong a fantasy outlook he has. And, the going 6th overall just kind of gave him that last piece that we expected him to get, where he's going to get work right away. He's almost definitely going to deliver for us immediately and at least through the life of his rookie deal. So an easy, boring first pick. Jacob, because you're the guest, I'm going to let you go second. Who are you taking at 102 in a super flex?
I'm taking Travis Hunter. It's been really tough. I had Omarion Hampton ranked ahead of him. I originally had Tetairoa McMillan ahead of him as well because I didn't know how much he's going to play, but it's rookie fever season and I am just a man and I am not immune to it. And I'm here. I'm just like unbelievably excited thinking about what this Jaguars offense could be with Liam Cohen engineering it and Brian Thomas Jr. just scaring defenses over the top and Travis Hunter being freed up to have one-on-one all the time. Like, yeah, give me that upside.
Now, I've talked with the guys plenty, we've talked plenty about Travis Hunter's outlook, of course. What makes you like him ahead of Tet McMillan? And I guess, are you at all worried about being on the same team with Brian Thomas Jr. limiting his ultimate target and thus, production upside?
No, I think BTJ only helps him. I guess the easy corollary would be what happened at LSU, where Malik Neighbors just completely dominated the target share with BTJ, taking the top off the defense, but not being targeted as quite a high of a rate. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case because BTJ was so good last year, but we have seen him be like out alphaed before. And we're talking about Travis Hunter, who went 2nd overall. He was the first non-rookie or non-quarterback to ever be traded up for and taken in that range. When he was on the field and playing a full allotment of snaps at wide receiver, he averaged more fantasy points than any of the incoming receivers. And he was doing that when he basically just rolled off the couch and decided to play receiver. He's practicing with the defense, telling what routes through sideline and everything. And it's just he's still being this efficient. That's kind of insane. If this is truly going to be offense, like Ben said, when you watch the film, the skill set allows him to win in such a wide variety of ways. He's such a hard coverage assignment. BTJ has to be the emphasis for the defense, right? He's so scary. You have to play cloud coverage. You have to be knowing where he's at all the time. If Hunter is not the emphasis, then I think he's just going to win over and over.
On a related note, are you worried about Brian Thomas Jr. if you are that high on Travis Hunter?
I guess you could worry about his targets a little bit because what we saw at the end of the year, his value was a little bit predicated on volume, but I think that was mostly because the offensive environment was so bad that it had to be. If the offensive environment is better, then I think he could alleviate any drop off in target volume through efficiency because, of course, he could be efficient. Like Liam Cohen designed the offense and him being one of the best players in the NFL, he could definitely just create 10, 12 touchdowns. Who knows? Cohen is one of the best screen designers in the game. And he talked about that when he took over. All he talked about was BTJ. But since then, they've made an unprecedented investment in another receiver. That is what they're going to be judged off, is how Travis Hunter plays.
All right, Jared, you're up third, and I bet you did not expect Travis Hunter to already be off the board when we got to your first turn.
I'm not surprised. I mean, I've been in drafts where he's gone 102. I've also been in drafts where he slipped in the 105 or 106. And I think we're in a tier here beyond one. I think 2, 3, 4, 5 is a tier of 4 players. They're in Superflex. You can kind of go in any direction. It's going to be Omarion Hampton here for me. I just like the historical hit rate on first round running backs. I mean, these guys they rarely bust, even compared to the first round wide receivers. And that's because if a team invests a first round pick in a running back, that guy is going to get volume, both in the short term and the longer term. And we know volume is what fuels production in fantasy, especially at the running back position. So even if Hampton ends up not being good, which I don't think is the case, I think he's still a relatively safe investment here. And I do think he's a really good back. He's a 3-down back. The Chargers have already called him that. And he just landed in a great situation under Harbaugh and Greg Roman. We know they want to run the ball. I think Hampton's going to get plenty of volume in both the passing and rushing game. So he feels like maybe not as an exciting pick as Hunter or even Tet McMillan, but I just feel like the floor is a bit higher on Hampton. And I do think that matters in rookie drafts. Floor is important as well.
Yeah, this range seems a bit more fluid than usual for rookie drafts. I don't have Travis Hunter second, but I also think it's fine to have him anywhere from second to fifth. And you can say, I don't know how this is going to look, so I would rather take somebody else ahead of him. Or you can say, he's such a stud, I don't know how it's going to look either, but I'm excited to see how it works out. So it's a fun range of the draft. Shane, you're up fourth, and the first quarterback has not yet been drafted. Do you think that the other guys underrated him, or is this appropriate?
Look, I mean, if you guys are going to force me to take the quarterback in Superflex, I guess I'll take him. No, I think it's a mistake. I will take Cam Ward, the quarterback for the Tennessee Titans here. Number 1 overall pick at quarterback, landing in a situation that I think is better than most number 1 overall picks. We've talked about that on the show before, that you have Calvin Ridley as number 1. You have a top 10 offensive line in front of Cam Ward, which is really what he needs to be able to freelance and do the things that he does really well. Sits in a Brian Callahan offense that we've seen Joe Burrow excel in as a number 1 overall pick as a rookie. I think Cam Ward is set up for success. I think this narrative of a bad quarterback class is knocking him down the Superflex board when he's probably in line with a Drake May from last year, who in this class would have been the first overall pick, would have been probably a top 2 pick in Superflex rookie drafts. So I think Cam Ward is getting knocked down the rookie draft board in Superflex when he shouldn't be.
And it's not just our mock draft here, of course. I had lots of drafts start up on FFPC over the weekend, and Cam Ward could go anywhere from 2 to 6. I think I saw him go. Maybe he slipped later than that in one of the 5 drafts. I don't remember for sure at the moment, but certainly further than you typically see a quarterback who went first overall in the draft go in a Superflex rookie draft. I'll be very curious to see how things play out for Cam Ward, but I'm with you, Shane. I think I have him a little bit earlier than this on the board. The way that this particular draft is going, though, has made it an easy second selection for me, because I'm going to take Tet McMillan, who I would actually take ahead of Travis Hunter. And, not a pick that I would arm wrestle anybody over, but for me, it's a little bit about safety. Travis Hunter is a tremendous athlete, probably going to be an exciting NFL player, but also entering in a way that we haven't seen before, where he is planning, or at least hoping, to play a lot of defense and a lot of offense. And I don't know how Jacksonville's going to work that out. So that adds just a little bit of risk. Tet McMillan goes to a Carolina team that needs him to be the lead wide receiver right away. So I think he's going to deliver at least usable numbers for us right away. And then we'll see if that red zone size and plenty after the catch ability, turn into big fantasy upside for him going forward. All right, Jacob, it's another fluid range now, because we've got a whole bunch of running backs that could be ordered in any way. We've got the second quarterback on the board. We've got the next group of wide receivers or 2, tight ends. What do you like at 106 in a Superflex rookie mock draft?
TreVeyon Henderson for me, please. I actually did get Cam Ward at 6 the other day because somebody took TreVeyon 5. For me, it's a top 5 tier. But I think a lot of people put Henderson into this tier. And then if you're playing in tight end premium, I would put Colston Loveland into this tier. I'm curious where you guys are at with Henderson. Do you think he's in this tier? Or do you think he's more in the Judkins group?
I would put him in the tier below, but I think he and Judkins are very close. But I'm with you, Jacob, and I think this one is 6 pick. I would have taken Henderson as well.
Yeah, he's at the top of this next tier for me. I don't think he belongs with those other 4 guys. Henderson's an exciting player. I think the landing spot's solid. I just have questions about his ultimate volume ceiling. Like, is he ever going to be a guy who gets 250 carries? I don't think he's going to. Now, that doesn't mean he can't produce for us. We know he's going to do plenty in the passing game. He's a big play threat. I think he belongs at the 106 here.
I haven't been able to land him anywhere in my drafts. As I've reflected, I do drafts with my brother. We co-manage, and we've done 6 or 7 drafts so far. And I'm looking, I'm like, who do we not have that I want to get some exposure to? It's him. And it's like, I feel like I'm right at consensus, but then you get people reaching for him at 5 and stuff like that. It just feels expensive. Or if I'm on the clock at 6 and I'm like willing to trade down, there's somebody who wants to come get him every time. And it's like, well, yeah, I'll take that. That's a good value.
Well, you're welcome for the opportunity to take Henderson here. I think it seems to me so far in rookie drafts that people are running back hungry. And again, all of mine so far have been on FFPC. So it could be a specific format where you only have to start 2 receivers, or it could be a specific kind of drafter that's acting that way. But we'll see if more rookie drafts show us the same thing where these running backs are getting pushed up. Jared, who are you taking now that Henderson is off the board and we're into that next tier?
Yeah, I'm going to swallow my pride here a bit and take Quinshon Judkins, who I didn't love redraft. I think some of the advanced metrics we look at from him last year at Ohio State alongside TreVeyon Henderson were not that impressive. Now, that said, Judkins was super productive at Ole Miss, including that massive freshman season, which was obviously super impressive to break out at that age in the SEC. And then he gets the draft capital, actually going ahead of Henderson in the draft. He goes to Cleveland. I think that depth chart is wide open. And the Browns have already talked about, they've called him a bell cow. They've called him versatile, which I like to hear because, his pass catching profile is not great, but it sounds like they think he can do at least some stuff in the passing game. So I think he's another guy who right out of the gate is going to get big volume. The situation there is a bit of a concern. That offense obviously might struggle, but I also believe in Kevin Stefanski. I think he's, one of the best, 5, 6, 7 play callers in the NFL. So that offense should even be, I think, a bit better than the personnel would suggest, but mostly with Judkins, it's just the volume I think he's going to get right out of the gate.
Yeah, I like Judkins more than you did heading in. I think it's a very good landing spot for his upside. So I like him in rookie drafts. Shane, are we just going to make it Buckeyes from here through the rest of round 1?
Let's just keep the Buckeye train rolling. I am going to take Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think this is a tough spot because I do think Henderson and Judkins kind of have a tier of their own in a non-tight end premium format. I'm with Jacob. I think Loveland, and I'd even put Warren, make it a lot easier in tight end premium. But Egbuka gets the top 25 draft capital. The situation, I think, is where people are turned off because you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin there in Tampa Bay, but they're going to run 3 receiver sets often. I think we'll see Egbuka play some of that Godwin role. They'll kind of split that role a little bit. Maybe we have a little bit of rookie production. This is really a pick for the future in a year or two when that Buccaneers wide receiver group looks differently. I think Egbuka could start to get the volume that he probably needs to pay off as a first round rookie pick.
He might turn into a value in these rookie drafts because he had plenty of fans going in, but then landed in a spot that doesn't have immediately obvious opportunity. We'll see through the summer if Chris Godwin's recovery ends up giving Egbuka more opportunity than we expected. But I think ultimately you just kind of bet on the talent, and then we'll see how things work out in terms of that opportunity. I'm up at 109 here, and I like Jaxson Dart. I mean, I think that there's risk to him. I certainly don't think he's a lock to pay off. And Shane, in his rookie draft tiers article, pointed out what we've been talking about behind the scenes, that the quarterbacks who go later in round 1 have not done well in the NFL. It's a large group of guys who busted, and it makes sense. Like, if you're that good at quarterback, then you're going to go earlier. And if you go late in round 1, then you probably got some issue that makes you slide. Doesn't mean that all those guys are bust. We've had some players in that range work out. Jordan Love is the most recent. Aaron Rodgers was, of course, a late first rounder. Lamar Jackson went all the way at the end of round 1. So it's possible to hit from there. And at this stage in my rookie draft, I'm okay just taking a shot on that upside, knowing that it's possible it doesn't work out, because I think it would help my team more in this Superflex league if Jaxson Dart with rushing upside and downfield passing ability hits. Then it'll harm my team if he doesn't work out. Jacob, before you make your pick, what are your thoughts on Jaxson Dart and whether he belongs right there?
I love it. Yeah. I have been getting a lot of Jaxson Dart. It seems like people maybe don't believe in him. And so I've been able to get him as late as like 202 in Superflex leagues where it's tied in premium. So maybe Warren Loveland are ahead of him, but still that's way too late. So the criticism seemed to be that like he got some hand holding with the Lane Kiffin offense. But with that said, like he's, sure, but he was one of the most efficient Lane Kiffin quarterbacks ever. So like I think that is noteworthy that he outperformed the other guys who have had the same treatment. And then when you watch his film, like he doesn't have to often make full field progressions, but like he does do it. And he does deliver NFL throws like pretty regularly. Like I think there are plenty of people who've come to the conclusion that like, yes, this is a real, starting NFL caliber quarterback. That's why he went in round 1. And then the thing for fantasy that makes him so appealing and I think is totally worth this range is the running. And that's something that Dayball has talked about a lot. Is like he's compared him to Josh Allen. Talk about rookie fever, like getting carried away. I'm totally here with you on Dart.
And Josh Allen's interesting because obviously at this point it's tough to compare a quarterback coming into the league to Josh Allen, but the version of Josh Allen that came into the league was a lot rawer and also went earlier than Jaxson Dart did. So, a little bit of this is what the NFL does if you've got something to like at quarterback. All right, who do you like at this 110 spot in a Superflex rookie mock draft?
RJ Harvey. I'm so excited to land RJ Harvey. I've been pretty aggressive in trying to get him, and you kind of have to be because he's pushed up into this range at the back end of round 1. I actually think you can justify taking him ahead of Judkins if you like really want something. If you're a contender who like is picking in this back range and you want something to supercharge your team right now, I think Harvey could give us something special here with Sean Payton. Payton loves the guy, and that's clearly evidence in the draft capital. And there's plenty of reasons to love him. The film is awesome, but then statistically, like, oh my gosh, he had more runs of 15 plus yards across the past 2 seasons than Ashton Jeanty, more total runs. Nobody beats Ashton Jeanty in total numbers like ever, or efficiency numbers, but especially totals. That's so impressive to me. And I think he's a perfect fit here. So like one thing I do in the FFT newsletter is I really dive into like this specific, like getting in the weeds on stuff. And like, I just sent out a newsletter where it was like getting into all of the run schemes around the NFL and like the specifics of outside zone versus man gap and who's doing what and who's like specific with what they do and which coaches are adaptable. And so Liam Cohen is like the clear one that stands out and is really fun to talk about after what he did with Bucky Irving. I think Sean Payton is kind of slept on for like really being adaptable with the way he uses his running backs. And I bring this up in reference to Harvey because Harvey had the highest outside zone yard per run rate of any of the incoming backs, like above Caleb Johnson, who's like always talked about as this outside zone guy. He was really, really good on these runs. And if you look at the usage for the Denver guys last year, it was mostly man gap running for Javonte, Estime, and Tyler Beatty. But then like McLaughlin, almost no man gap running, almost exclusively outside zone. 64% of his runs are outside zone, which is a really high number. Like the league leader among qualifiers is like 48% or something like that. And so he's willing to be like really specific with the way that he uses these guys to maximize their skill sets. And I think that like Harvey is the kind of guy who can come in and just immediately maximize on that role. The offensive line is really, really good. And like that's his whole strength is his patience, his ability to like jab at that offensive line and find the spot and then burst through it. And that brings me to like my favorite point about RJ Harvey that I don't think people hit on enough. His burst is maybe the best in the whole class, like even compared to like Bishal Tootin. If you look at the timed speed on the 10-yard split and the 40-yard dash, he was running faster. His time speed was higher than anybody on that 10-yard split. He ends up running a 4.4, which is really good. But if you just look at that initial quickness, like he's as good as it gets. And I think that's going to be perfect for the setup here in Denver. I think he's just going to be creating chunk plays over and over and over.
So Harvey goes 5th among running backs here. Where was he among running backs for you ahead of the NFL draft?
I liked him a lot, but it was like, you don't want to get carried away with it because the hit rate for 24-year-old running backs is really low. Mm-hmm. And also like there's some pass blocking concerns. He didn't do a ton as a receiver either. So it's like, you love the film, you love the analytics and everything, but like, we'll see, as we saw with this draft, like a lot of teams are totally content, just like waiting and waiting and waiting on the running back position. And some of these guys fall way down the board. And you could see that happening for a 24-year-old, but then like he gets literally the perfect spot and the draft capital to back it up. Like Denver is basically as good as it gets when it was coming to like teams that need running back. I don't want to get too carried away with it, but it's like if he outproduced all of the rookies in fantasy, that wouldn't shock me. I don't think he'll get there. you have to bet on Jeanty, of course, but it's like the offense is going to be so much better, right? Like, I don't know, man. Like, if you look at the running backs that Peyton has hand selected, they've been so good for fantasy. And even Javonte Williams last year, who seemed like he was total dust, like he was, I think, 4th in the running back position in total targets. Like, that's how it always is with Peyton, is he's throwing at the running back position like crazy. And so, like Harvey, he really can get on this crazy like upward projection when it comes to upside. If he gets touchdowns, if he gets receptions, then it could just get out of control. Because like I talked about with the rushing efficiency, I think that is clearly going to be there. Rookie fever's in full effect. Like I'll just get out of control here with Harvey, but like, man, it could be a huge season.
Jared, I'm sure that you're disappointed to not see Harvey still on the board to get to your spot here. We've certainly talked plenty about Harvey. I know that our listeners know that you're a fan of Harvey. I think he's appropriately plotted here. I think any earlier, though, we might be climbing into CEH versus Jonathan Taylor territory in terms of reading these rookies. What do you think about that? And then what do you want for your 111?
And I've drafted Harvey in my real rookie drafts a couple times already, and I do have this like slight worry that I'm just overrating the landing spot in the draft capital. But like Jacob said, I think he's someone I think I overlooked Harvey a bit in the pre-draft process. I think he's better than where I had him ranked pre-draft, and mostly I'm just gonna ride with Sean Payton when he takes a running back in round 2. Like I'm just gonna trust that he likes the guy, he knows the guy's gonna fit in his system, he's gonna use the guy. I think all that stuff is true. So yeah, Harvey would have been my pick here, but with him off the board, I'm gonna break the tight end seal and go with Colston Loveland here, who I had right there with Tyler Warren pre-draft. To me, Loveland had the better college production profile. If you look at their whole careers and adjusting for age, I think Loveland was more impressive. I'm glad that the Bears saw that and that Ben Johnson saw that, and that Ben Johnson handpicked this guy to be, his first pick with the Bears, the first pick of the Ben Johnson regime. We've already heard the Sam Laporta, Colston Loveland comparisons. I do think he's going to be used in a similar fashion in Ben Johnson's offense. Obviously, target competition is tough in the short term, but I'm betting on the long-term talent and fit here. I think, Loveland is already tight end 6 in our overall Dynasty tight end rankings behind Tyler Warren. I'd have him above Tyler Warren, so he'd be my tight end 5 already in the overall tight end Dynasty rankings. So I think that is worth a pick at 111 here, even in a league that is not tight end premium.
Yeah, I think he makes sense here as well. Shane, who are you picking to close out round 1?
I'll keep the tight end train going. I'm going to take Tyler Warren here with the 112, and I'm a little bit worried. I think there's definitely red flags with Tyler Warren. The late breakout and the age are concerns that we've addressed. The Colts landing spot, it could be okay. Could be iffy just with the passing rates that they have. But I think you don't take Tyler Warren where the Colts took him in the middle of the first round if you're not going to use him. I think it's going to be Anthony Richardson. If you don't know what to do with the ball, look at Tyler Warren and just throw him the ball. This is the easy check down target. Just keep peppering him with targets when you have to throw the football. I think Tyler Warren does so many things so well. I think he's very athletic, especially in some of that short space, more than people gave him credit for. We saw it as an elite red zone target, potentially, the different things that he does. And we've seen Shane Steichen on the Eagles use Dallas Goedert very effectively as a two-way tight end to give fantasy production and have tight end 1 numbers. I think Tyler Warren can certainly do that. And the tight end position is difficult in Dynasty right now. And I think Warren's a nice bet to take and feel safe as an every week starter.
Yeah, I like Warren. I think Warren's a better bet for production this year if you are looking for a tight end that's going to contribute right away. I think a year from now, we might see fantasy managers preferring Warren because of better first year production, just because it's so crowded in Chicago at the moment. But both very good young players. I think both worth late first round picks. I'm going to kick off round 2 with a guy that I don't really like for a rookie draft season. But if Matthew Golden makes it out of round 1, I think he's a fine pick anywhere in round 2. We've talked plenty on our shows. He never led a college team in receptions. And to me, that's a red flag for a wide receiver. It says that I shouldn't bet on him going to the NFL and leading his team there in receptions if it didn't happen yet. That said, he's a talented player. He went in the first round to a team that never drafts first round wide receivers. So he's going to get opportunity. It is, kind of an open situation, but we've also seen the Packers spread targets around. So I don't think anybody in Green Bay is going to wind up getting, 24, 25% target share. So I think Golden is ultimately probably like a low end wide receiver 2 fantasy ceiling wise. He's fine. And we'll see if I'm wrong and maybe I'm underrating him. Jacob, since we've talked plenty about Matthew Golden on our shows, what do you think about Golden, especially if it's anything different than what I just said?
I've had a tough time with Golden, of course. I haven't landed him in very many rookie drafts. I will say, I think you can you can contextualize and like tell a story for like why the production wasn't better. Transferring to a new school, and like it took some time for him to establish himself, but once he did, it was pretty good production at the end of the year. The comparison, if you want to make an upside comparison, is Lad McConkey, and I kind of see that when I watch him. McConkey was somebody who also wasn't all that productive in college. I think the excuses were clearer for him because it's like Brock Bowers is on his freaking team. But
and injuries.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But if so his per route data was pretty good. It was definitely better than Golden's, but like stylistically, they're similar, right? The way that they win. I think Golden is going to be really hard for defenses to account for with all the options that Green Bay has and with the coaching there. So I could see his efficiency being better than it was in college. Honestly, I would rather draft Luther Burden. I don't get Golden very much.
So is that who you're taking here? Is Luther Burden in the second spot?
I'm actually going to go with Caleb Johnson. He is another guy who I haven't landed, and I don't see him go this late. I think he's typically at the end of round 1 where I've been drafting. There were only 2 running backs last year who accounted for over half of their team's scrimmage yards, and that was Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey. I think everybody knew what was coming at Iowa, and it was still really hard to stop him. He's just kind of inevitable. And I think it's going to be the same thing here for Pittsburgh, where like the offense is, we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback, but like, I think you can just feed Johnson, and eventually on these outside zones, he's just going to create a huge play. And enough of those pile up. Like I really like the fit here. I haven't landed him anywhere. So here, thank you for this. I've got him and TreVeyon. That feels good.
Hey, we bring people in to give them gifts. So I'm happy that you could be here to accept them. Jared, who do you like into the third pick of round 2?
Yeah, I'm going Luther Burden here. Sticking with the Bears, and really same argument I made with Colston Loveland. Like it's tough to find targets for Burden out of the gate. But this is a guy that, this brand new coaching staff just handpicked in round 2. We don't know yet how Ben Johnson feels about DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and how they're going to fit into this offense. But he spent an early round 2 pick on Luther Burden. And Ben Johnson, we saw this in Detroit. He talked about it after being hired by the Bears. The slot position is super important in his offense. And Luther Burden, 88% of his routes from the slot at Missouri. So I imagine that's where Ben Johnson sees him playing. So and you talk about a guy who I think Burden's at his best with the ball in his hands. He does need to be schemed up, at least at this point of his career. And there's no one I'd rather have scheming up my receiver than Ben Johnson. So I do think it's a good landing spot, despite the immediate target competition. I do think long-term, it's a really good landing spot for Burden.
Yeah, I agree. I certainly like him better over the longer term than the short term. And I agree that you should just draft talent in these rookie drafts generally over trying to figure out exactly how it's going to work out fantasy wise for you beyond the rookie draft. Shane, who's a 4th pick around 2?
With the 204, I'm going to take Jaden Higgins, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. I think this is a tier break pick. In my tiers article is exactly where I had it after this top 15. There's a lot of options, and depending on my team and the direction I want to go, be who I'd pick here. But Higgins, early round 2 draft capital. So could have been a situation like last year if the Texans had moved up like the Panthers or 49ers to the end of round 1. I think Higgins could have easily been a 1st round pick. Some people kind of knocking him because of Nico Collins being there, Higgins being a similar player. I think we actually made that comp on the podcast before the draft of Higgins to Nico Collins as this kind of big X-type of receiver who has that downfield speed, has a little bit of wiggle and quick twitch ability that makes him dangerous. But Nick Howley, the new offensive coordinator, is coming over from the Rams, who knows how to use a Puka Nacua in creative ways. I think we're going to see Higgins and Collins in creative ways move around the formation. So I still trust that even with his former college teammate Jalen Noel also being drafted to the Texans, Higgins will be used well and has a lot of upside. If Nico Collins gets hurt again, I think it's wheels up for Higgins. So I'm going to kind of swing for that upside here.
When I heard you say tier break, I thought you were going to take a little break to cry out of happiness over getting a guy that you already told us that you really liked in round 2. This is lining up with everybody getting exactly what they want at this point, because I'm going to go Trey Harris in this spot. And these are the 3 receivers that each of us mentioned, highlighted as our favorite players in round 2 when we did that Rookie Sleepers podcast. I really like Trey Harris, both long and short term. I think that the production profile from college says a guy that we should bet on, doing at least worthwhile stuff and potentially big things statistically in the NFL. And then he landed with the Chargers in round 2. They've got immediate openings for targets. They've got Lad McConkey from last year. I don't think he's going anywhere, but they obviously need somebody else. And currently the top options to be somebody else are Quentin Johnston and whatever's left of Mike Williams. So if Trey Harris is ready this summer, he could easily be their wide receiver 2 and could be an efficient scorer with his downfield ability, run after catch ability, and Justin Herbert as his quarterback. Jacob, you're going to be up for the next pick, but I'm curious to get your take on those 3 wideouts that we just had go right in order.
I love this range. To me, in this rookie draft, there's a clear drop off after the top 20 players, and that would be like Scadaboo, Tootin, Harris, Higgins. And I think that from there are guys that I really like still, but it's like a clear difference in terms of tier. And so I've been like trading up into this range. Anytime I can consolidate, like from round 3 into this range, I'll do it. I really love the Higgins call. He's been moving up my board more and more. I got a little bit nervous because Matt Harmon and Reception Perception didn't love the film quite as much as I did, but then he lands in a perfect spot where he can be in the slot and Nico can like take the top off of defenses. I don't think defense is going to be able to worry about him. And yeah, he got drafted ahead of Luther Burden, which I don't think people realize, but like this is legit draft capital that they invested in him, and they have needs. They need offensive line for sure. They didn't add really anything to their defense. And like they use this draft capital on Higgins, and I think that's really exciting. And yeah, if Nico were to go down, then I think him and Jalen Noel could carry the offense. Honestly, could still be good. So I love all 3 of these guys. Trey Harris like is really easy to make a case for. Like he's so exciting, and the pairing there with Herbert is perfect. So yeah, I love all these picks. I'm gonna go with Jalen Milroe. Get another quarterback on the board here. Unbelievable upside. Like it's pretty simple. The running is unique, and I really do like his film. Kind of like Dart, there was some hand holding in the offense, but like there are some big like Sunday throws on film for sure. Needs to clean up the accuracy, but if you listen to him, like he is very transparent about like that being the weakness. Like that's one of the first things he brings up is like he's trying to improve the coordination between his lower half and his upper half and get that accuracy cleaned up. And like that's what when I watched him, I was like, he's only throwing like his bottom half is not moving or even squared up. He's just like all torque from the top. And it shows up, but like there's plenty of throws where it's a clean rep and it looks good. I love the landing spot. I'm really a huge Clint Kubiak fan. And I'm excited for like what it might look like if Milroe were to get in there. I think Kubiak with all the play action that he does could really maximize the efficiency there. He's got, a good number 1 receiver in Jackson Smith and Jigba. Excited about the Arroyo edition as well. Yeah, I'm really happy to get him in this range.
Go ahead and ring the bell for the first time I've heard. I'm a big Clint Kubiak fan, but we like that. And I agree it's a good landing spot, especially because they just got their quarterback for at least the near future. So they can afford to let Jalen Milroe actually develop, which doesn't seem to happen a whole lot at this point. Jared, who's going 207?
Yeah, I'm going to go Bashaw Tootin here, mostly because I know Shane and Matt are hoping that he would fall to them. We're all Tootin fans here. And sticking with my theme of these draft picks on new coaching staffs, right? Liam Cohen comes to Jacksonville and he takes Bashaw Tootin in round 4, which nowadays pretty nice draft capital for a running back. Cohen has no ties to Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby. Etienne's actually a free agent after this season. So, we'll see how the backfield shakes out this year. But I think beyond this year, I think Cohen envisions a significant role for Tootin. Cohen actually talked about how in his interview with the Jags before he got hired, they asked him to, pinpoint a day 3 guy who he might target who would be a good fit in his offense. And Tootin was the guy that he pinpointed in the interview, and he ends up landing him. So a big play back in this Cohen offense that we saw produce huge numbers last year for Bucky Irving and some of those other Bucs running backs. I think Tootin, we'll see exactly how big of a workload he garners. And I do think his pass catching profile is pretty poor, but I think at minimum, he's going to make big plays on the ground for this Jags offense.
Yeah, we knew when we started the show that we had 3 Tootin fans. It sounds like we have a 4th one on board. He's a player too that even if you don't get him in a rookie draft, I'll be watching him early this season to see if he maybe starts out not getting the ball as much as we hoped heading in. And that might make him a trade target, because I don't think any of us thinks that Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne is on his way to something big from this moment. Shane, who's going 208?
Dart through the heart that I didn't get Bashaw Tootin there. I'm going to take Tyler Shuck, quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Is a pick I'm not super comfortable with. I don't necessarily love a quarterback that's turning 26 in September, but like Jacob said, with some of these players, I think you have to look at the narrative and look at the story. Shuck going from Oregon to Texas Tech to Louisville, and never having a full season till his final year because of some more freak injuries that aren't going to be long lasting for him. He has the arm strength. He ran a 4.6 40 at 6'5", 220 pounds. So he has some athleticism there. We know Derek Carr might be hurt, maybe isn't hurt. We'll see what happens if he starts. But Shuck has an opening here to start as a rookie. And if you have Kellen Moore as the head coach, I think one of the best, most accurate quarterbacks who threw with anticipation, and that's what Tyler Shough needs to improve on. If there's someone I trust to get Tyler Shough to be better and improve at the things he needs to do to be a starting NFL quarterback, then I think Kellen Moore is it. So I think Shough has a lot more upside than people are letting on because of the age, but early round 2 draft capital for him was really good, and he's definitely going to get a shot to be the Saints franchise quarterback of the future.
Yeah, as long as you're not reaching too far in your rookie draft, I think it's fine. If your 208 doesn't work out from your rookie draft, it's not killing your team. And if you tell yourself that it is, then you're lying to yourself. I'm going to reach over some other players in our Dynasty rookie Superflex rankings, and I'm going to take Cam Skattebo right here because I think there's a shot that he debuts as the lead running back for a Giants team that, got more than it could have really expected from Tyrone Tracy as a rookie, but probably not as much as his, fantasy numbers are making people think. Tyrone Tracy was a fine running back last year, not awesome. And his skill set can be complementary to Cam Skattebo's because, one's a former wide receiver. The other is a guy who would rather run through your front door than knock. And Skattebo also caught a whole bunch of passes at Arizona State. So there's also a chance that he just takes more work than Tyrone Tracy if he proves that he can handle it and that he's effective despite being, relatively slow for an NFL running back. Jacob, who's going 210? It sounds like that was, or maybe this is the end of the range of guys that you really like.
Yeah, you sniped me. That was the end of the range. Love both those running back picks. I'll go with Kyle Williams. This is a reach, I guess, but man, I've seen him go as high as 207 recently. Some people are definitely pushing him up their boards. He kind of like Golden is somebody where you wish that the data was better for as like quick as he looks on film, but you can contextualize it a little bit by one stat that I like is the percentage of the receiving yards and touchdowns that a player accounted for while they were on the field. And it just like shows when an offense was kind of dysfunctional, like couldn't produce without that player doing it all for them. That was something that showed up for Williams. And so like I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I did see that on film too, where the offensive ecosystem wasn't that great. And I think he's somebody who can separate, and that's exactly what Drake May needs. And so just the pairing there of May being able to throw with anticipation to somebody who has legit speed and can get open a lot is really exciting.
Jared, you're up at 211. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go Pat Bryant here. And I think, this also feels like a reach because I'm with Jacob. I think it gets pretty, I'm definitely looking to trade down here if this is a real rookie draft. And, I think it's pretty flat for the next 10 or so picks. But Pat Bryant, Sean Payton compared him to Michael Thomas. What else do you need to hear to take a shot on Pat Bryant? He's actually, I don't know, maybe I'm wearing Sean Payton colored glasses because I think like with RJ Harvey, Pat Bryant's guy who I went back and looked at like post draft. And I do think his college production is more impressive than I was giving it credit for before the draft. You look at the market shares and the yards per team, pass attempt, and that stuff. It's pretty strong. I think there's immediately an opportunity for Bryant to be the number 2 wide receiver in Denver. And then Courtland Sutton getting up there in age. He's also only signed through this coming season. So, 2026 and beyond, Bryant could, I'm not betting on it, but he could be Denver's, top wide receiver starting next season.
Spoiler alert, if you're drafting with Jared, he's taking the next Bronco or Bear in your rookie draft.
I love this pick, Jared. I have not landed any Pat Bryant, and I don't see him go this early, but I can see the vision. I really did like his film. I'm a little confused on what the role might be this year. When I watched him, he looked like, okay, this is a legit X receiver that can run a lot of routes, and that's cool. And so I see him as like the Courtland Sutton mold. But the Michael Thomas stuff, that kind of comparison, and like I don't know, do you guys think he has the juice to be like a full-time like flanker in that second spot, or do you think it'll probably, what I'm guessing is it'll be more of a rotation with the guys they already have there and they like?
I would expect a rotation right out of the gate, and I think Peyton even sees him playing in the slot a little bit. I think he mentioned that in one of his press conferences. But I think long term, ultimately the vision and for him to hit his fantasy ceiling, or like you said, Jacob, replacing Sutton as that big X receiver, I do think he has the ability to do that. We'll see what Peyton thinks.
Such an interesting player pool here. These receivers that go in round 3 of the real draft: Tesla, Pat Bryant, Savion Williams, even Dante Thornton for the Raiders. I think he was round 4. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4. But nobody drafts these guys. They're like falling into round 4. Sometimes I'm scooping them after a 4-round rookie draft with Fab, and it's like, what? No one even drafted this player? Like, I don't know. It's such an interesting player pool here because I really think after the top 20, they're almost all entirely flat. There's some tight ends that I really like if you're in tight end premium, but if you're not, like, it's almost just like super, super flat. Are you going to base it off like your own conviction with an evaluation on somebody like Dylan Sampson or Torrey Horton or somebody you really liked, but they fell? Or do you like trust what the NFL said with the draft capital? And depending on how the people in your league value or make that decision, you could get some like kind of crazy steals, I think, with some of these guys.
Shane, are you taking one of those tight ends here, or is it somebody else at 212?
I'm going to keep pumping the receivers here. I'm going to go with Jack Besh, the wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, going in the second round. Just on film, I love what Jack Besh does. The route running, the hands, he is a technician. I think he can play outside. He can play inside. I wouldn't be surprised in that kind of barren Raiders receiving environment outside of Brock Bowers, if Jack Besh really emerges as just a clean player that can get separation. Back in 2021, outproduced Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. on that LSU squad, but it's never really had the production, I think, to back up what we see on film. It doesn't have that deep speed, didn't run the 40 because it was going to be bad. So he just didn't do that, which is always scary. But similar to Pat Bryant, I think it's a situation where I'll trust kind of the player. I'll trust now with Geno Smith, and it's going to be a run-first offense. But I think Besh can have enough targets to be interesting early and maybe develop into something a little bit more later in his career, a couple years in.
We're actually going to go now to Jakobi Meyers on line 2, and he is pretty angry about you. He's calling it a barren situation outside of Brock Bowers.
Look, I know you're the Jakobi Meyers guy, but I think he's very upgradable.
So do you think that Jack Besh is a potential upgrade on Jakobi Meyers as opposed to a core mate with him?
Not as a rookie. I don't think Jack Besh walks into that situation and is better than a veteran. But I think by year 2, absolutely, I think Jack Besh could take that role away from Jakobi Meyers.
Interesting, because Jakobi Meyers had a better prospect profile, I think, than Besh, because even though he went undrafted, he was very productive in college, and he's been an underrated receiver throughout his NFL run so far. I think, Shane, Jakobi Meyers and I are going to be making money together this year because everybody seems to be looking at it like that it's just a barren wasteland of target, avoiders and Brock Bowers.
I love running into other Jakobi Meyers fans. There are dozens of us.
Hey, I'll take a guy who just produces. Kicking off round 3. Now I was all distracted by that. Now I got to figure out exactly who's still on the board and what I like. I'm going to get the tight ends reacquainted with our draft here, and I'll take Elijah Arroyo, who I was a little bit slow coming around on because I don't love when a guy only has one real year of college production, but I know that there are sometimes ways to explain that away. And by the time we get to round 3 of a rookie draft, I think it's okay to start explaining things away as opposed to counting them as red flags and skipping over guys because of them. More importantly, the team that just drafted him is talking about Arroyo being a dynamic type of receiver, not just some guy that's going to get on the field a little bit and play tight end. They're talking about him being able to play downfield, talking about him being able to do wide receiver type stuff. And I mean, the biggest plus of all is that when you take him, you can announce him as Arroyo. So he's my pick to start round 3. And now we're on to Jacob for the second pick.
They're talking about him like he's the next Kyle Pitts, which is fun. That's my problem with him actually a little bit for fantasy is like, we haven't seen hardly any tight ends who are good fantasy tight ends who are like almost exclusively working the vertical plane, which is what Arroyo does so well. And I think is exactly what Seattle needs is that speed. I don't know how many underneath targets he's going to get because they have Kupp and JSN to kind of soak up those looks. So like what I did is I looked at like some tight ends historically who've had like 50 or more targets and an average depth of target above 10, just to like trying to find some archetypes. And it's like Vernon Davis, Jermichael Finley, Jared Cook, Pitts. More recently, like you get some Dulcich for the Broncos or like Mike Gesicki, guys who it's just, they haven't been very reliable for fantasy. But then again, like when is tight end reliable? So I'm totally fine taking the swing on upside with Arroyo. But that's just something I think about a lot is like, can he get more than like 10 or 12% of the targets? I just don't know how realistic it is.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And I think that it's a good point in that if that player is going at 112, then I'm like, I don't know. But if that player is at, round 3, I'm like, we'll see if it doesn't work out. So, okay.
That's what the Seahawks did.
He's probably already their best X receiver, right? Because Kupp and JSN are doing that. But the other thing about Arroyo, I mean, he led FBS tight ends in yards after the catch per reception last year. So like he can do that. Whether he'll do that in this version of the Seahawks, I'm not sure because they do have those two, more underneath receivers. But I think longer term, I mean, JSN is established there, but Kupp probably isn't, long for Seattle. So I'm hoping, long term they do see him as that run after catch threat as well.
I didn't see hardly any of it where it's a designed like catch and run. Like what I saw him getting yak was like he's burning guys and then there's no one who can catch him. So he runs for 40 extra yards. But I hope you're right. Like I think Noah Fant maybe would be kind of the clean, like role you could envision where he's drafted for the speed, but then he develops into more. I don't know if he's good with the ball in his hands the way Fant was. Fant is like really pretty powerful with the ball in his hands. Definitely intriguing. But yeah, like the Seahawks, to Matt's point, were like, if the medical is checked out and he was healthy throughout his college career, this is like a top 15 player in the draft. And they're talking about playing X and everything. So like it's real easy to get excited about him. There's still multiple tight ends on the board that I like. So I'm going to take a risk here and see if they fall to me with my next pick. And I'm going to go with Jed on Blue, the Cowboys. I misspoke earlier when I said that RJ Harvey had the highest yard per rush rate on outside zone runs. It's actually Tootin and then Blue and then Harvey. But I think, stylistically, you look at those guys and they're pretty similar. Like they're speed guys who also have the vision and patience to like wait for that hole and then execute and like hit it. Whereas somebody like Donovan Edwards or whatever, like has the speed, but doesn't have the requisite like patience to do it. These guys do. You don't want to make Devon Achane comparisons, but like when I watch Blue, he is like 75% of that, where he like has the ability to process and has the patience to let things develop and just like keep working horizontally until he can find that spot to push through vertically. And then like he's gone. Definitely has the potential to make plays for a Cowboys offense that really needs somebody to make plays.
I enjoy when we're like, I don't want to compare him to this guy, but now I'm going to compare him to this guy.
75%. Like,
yeah, that's totally fair. I think it's good to add some context to that. Like for people who are actually paying attention and can get it, you can be like, I don't think he's this guy, but he does this thing like this guy. And maybe there's a chance that he can be some of what this guy has become. So yeah, I like that. I think that you didn't really misspeak earlier and you just left Jaden Blue out so you could pick him later in the draft. Jared, who's the third pick around 3?
Just going back to Blue, I try to trust the numbers over my eyes for most prospects, but I think every year I try to give myself like one player. I'm just gonna. I know the production wasn't great, but I want to be in on this guy because he's so fun to watch, and it's Jaden Blue for me this year. I just think he's such an awesome pass catcher and so fun in space. I was surprised that the Cowboys didn't take a running back earlier and then took Blue as their first running back pick, because I don't think he's going to be a guy who gets more than like 8 to 10 carries per game as a pro. But even if he can do that and then catch 50 balls a season, something like that, I think that's in his range of outcomes. He's definitely worth a pick in round 3 of rookie drafts.
Legitimately a good receiver. They were using him down the field.
Yeah.
On routes, which you almost never see.
For sure. I'm going to go Jalen Noel here. He was right there with Jaden Higgins production-wise at Iowa State. Now, Noel doesn't have the size Higgins does. I think he's going to be a primary slot receiver as a pro, but there's room for him in Houston. I've never been a big Christian Kirk fan. You look at, the Texans only gave up a 7th-round pick for him, and he's only signed for this coming season. So even if you do think Kirk is going to hang on to the role this year, which I think Noel could push him, I think by midseason, Noel could be ahead of Kirk on the depth chart and playing that primary slot position for these Texans. But even if not, I think by 2026, Noel could be that guy. And as Shane mentioned earlier, when he took Jaden Higgins, Nick Caley comes over as the Texans' new OC. He's from that Sean McVay coaching tree. So I do think this is going to be a team that's running a ton of 3 wide receiver sets. So even if you do have Nico Collins and Higgins as the outside top 2 receivers, I think Noel's going to be on the field a lot for this team.
I'll be surprised if he makes a big impact this year. I know they didn't give up much for Christian Kirk, but they're paying him something like $19 million for the season. So I agree, longer term, certainly upside to Noel, and I don't expect Christian Kirk to be a long-term factor in Houston. So if we're looking beyond the season, I also like Noel. Shane, who we got at 304?
I feel like the 3rd round of rookie drafts is like, should I pick with my head or pick with my heart is where I come down to. So I'm going to pick with my heart here, and I'm going to take Jalen Royals, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. I raved about him before the draft. Was one of my favorite receivers in the entire NFL draft, just for the after the catch ability that Jalen Royals has. And now he lands with the Chiefs. Pre-draft comped him some to Rashee Rice, and he's going to back up Rashee Rice. We know with the injury to Rice, maybe a suspension looming this year or next year, Royals might get opportunities. He's not someone I expect to, as a rookie, break out, and Andy Reid's going to use him in all these creative ways. He's probably going to be behind Rice and the veterans, but is someone, if Royals flashes, and we're already seeing a little bit of flashing in rookie camps, that maybe he can earn a role going forward as a weapon. And if there's someone I trust with a receiving weapon that maybe doesn't have the route running or the technician ability, came from Utah State, not from a big school, it's Andy Reid. So I'm going to take the chance in the 3rd round when I'm just trying to hit home runs here. And I think Royals has more a chance of that than my head telling me just take one of the safe tight ends.
I could take a tight end here, but I'm going to leave all of the rest of them on the board and see who Jacob likes among the tight ends at this point. I'm instead going to go ahead and grab Alec Iomanor. Was disappointed by the draft capital. I was certainly hoping he was going to go earlier than round 4. And, especially hoping that his NFL team would not take a different wide receiver first. But I still think he's a better prospect than Chimere Dike, especially because between the two difficult to pronounce names, I have to put more thought into DK every time because he's closer to actually getting me in trouble if I mispronounce it. But more seriously, Iomanor was a productive player across 2 years at Stanford, despite being in an offense that wasn't necessarily conducive to him putting up big numbers. We've talked about him plenty on here. There's enough size, enough speed, and he goes to a Tennessee team with opportunity. Calvin Ridley is old for an NFL wide receiver, and there's not a whole lot of proven talent behind him at the position. So we could see Iomanor challenge for a number 2 type of receiver role as soon as this year. I certainly like the long-term upside. Jacob, who do you like next in round 3?
We have got some names in this draft, like even the simple ones like Noel or Noel, or even like I hear people call Judkins Junkins all the time, like junk. And like, I don't know
That's
what's right.
Rude.
I don't watch college football. I just don't have time with all the NFL stuff that I'm doing. And so I just watched like the all 22 film and there's no audio on that. So I literally have no idea if I'm butchering these names, and I'm sorry. So you guys were so nice to me today, and you just continue to do it. You left me the tight end that I want here, and that's Terrence Ferguson for the Rams. Super excited about this guy. Because Elijah Arroyo didn't run at the combine, Ferguson ended up having the best athleticism of the tight end class. He's really smooth. Like once he gets going, he's really got pretty impressive build-up speed and can get away from guys. That's how they used him more so than Arroyo. Like on the vertical plane, they used him more like on horizontal drags and stuff like that, where he can build up that speed and get away. And he's big and smooth as a mover. And I'm excited by the draft capital. Like I see people take Mason Taylor ahead of him sometimes, and he was drafted just 4 spots behind Taylor. I assume that Taylor, it's like the draft capital and the fit, but it's like, I think you can make a similar argument for Ferguson. He's maybe more blocked for targets, but like it's a much better offense. So give me that. Give me the shot on upside with McVay.
Shane, I think you've been our high man on Mason Taylor through the process. Where are you on Taylor versus Ferguson, who I know you also like?
I like Ferguson too, but I lean Taylor. Just to me is he's going to get on the field. I think Ferguson has the upside, as Jacob said. I mean, better offense, has the athleticism. If Ferguson starts, I think he is going to hit more for fantasy. I think Mason Taylor's blocking, which can be a detriment in the fantasy space, is going to get him on the field. I think Mason Taylor is the best tight end on the Jets, is the second target. And it might be more of a Jake Ferguson, Dalton Schultz situation where we don't feel like Taylor's, this super sexy tight end, but it just gets it done for us. That's kind of where I am with Taylor.
Those are words from a guy who spends too much time watching film when he starts calling these tight ends super sexy. Jared, save us here.
Mason Taylor should probably be the pick here. I can't get myself to click his name. I don't know. He doesn't,
you don't have to.
Doesn't excite me as a prospect. And the landing spot, there's long-term questions about the quarterback. So I'll leave Mason Taylor for Shane. I'm going to take Dylan Sampson, who honestly is another guy I haven't ended up with a lot of. I think I was below consensus on him pre-draft, but I mean, you look at the 2024 season was impressive. A lot of the film guys I trust really liked Dylan Sampson, even had him as one of the top 5 running backs in this class. He's one of, if not the youngest running back in this class. I think he's the youngest running back in this class, which you always like to see. And he lands in Cleveland. Yeah, he was the second running back drafted by the Browns, but there's opportunity there. I think Sampson could very easily win the number 2 job this season. And if Judkins falters, Sampson's there with an opportunity to be this team's lead back. So I think round 3, I guess I hadn't found the spot yet where I was comfortable taking Dylan Sampson, but I guess middle of round 3 is about where it is for me.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here, is working things out and finding out where you want to take a player. If we look at just Jared's 3 picks from that position, he hasn't liked 2 of them. So maybe he doesn't really want to pick at that particular spot in rookie drafts. Shane, is it Mason Taylor time, or are you going to go with other people into taking him?
It's Taylor time. Let's make the pick. I'll pop him in here toward the end of the 3rd round. I feel comfortable, even if I'm hitting a double with Mason Taylor instead of a home run. I think Justin Fields will lock on a little bit, especially in that red zone. I'm a sucker for Taylor's film as kind of a throwback tight end, and the bloodlines doesn't hurt either.
Hey, doubles score runs as well, and sometimes power hitters just swing and miss. I'm gonna I think go the boring route here, and I'm just gonna take DJ Giddens as the next running back. He's fine. the landing spot's fine, especially if Jonathan Taylor gets hurt. I think there's, certainly space for Giddens to be the primary backup to Jonathan Taylor. I'm not going to pump him up too much because I think ultimately he's not doing anything unless Taylor gets hurt. And then we'll see how much longer Taylor is in Indy. So this is one of those I just kind of click and move on.
I'll give you a sexy pick.
Oh, let's keep it focused on football here, pal.
Harold Fannin Jr., please. How about the college football receiving leader at tight end? I am so excited to watch him, dude.
I thought about going Harold Fannin, but honestly, I thought it'd be a little more interesting to see if anybody else took him. So we've talked him plenty. He slid in the draft despite the production because the athleticism might not match up, but it certainly sounds like you're a fan, Jacob.
Yeah, I don't think it was a bad slide. I'm glad to see him on day 2. I think, it's cool for him to go in and play with Njoku, who's one of the best yak tight ends that we've seen in recent memory. I think it's great for him to get developmental time too and not immediately have pressure to produce in the same way they did at college or whatever. Like, I could see him getting better as a blocker. He's extremely young and he just started playing tight end like 3 years ago. And that was like the main weakness for him. People point towards is like you have to play around him in the same way that you do with like Dalton Kincaid, where you have to have another tight end on the field. And so that means that for Fannin to play, he has to be like better as a receiver than your slot receiver, to get him on the field, which I think he could be. I mean, he was last year. He was incredible. And I think the film is good too. It's not just the data. So I'm really excited about him. He's kind of just an upside stash, but one that I really like in this range.
Jared, who do we have at the second to last spot in round 3?
I'm going to take Jarquez Hunter here. I mean, I think this is the range of rookie drafts where I'm focused in on these running backs that, went on day 3. They don't really have much of a chance to start out of the gate, but could be the handcuff on their teams this season. And then, beyond this season, I think Hunter's a guy who has a chance to be the Rams lead back in 2026 because Kyron Williams is not signed beyond this season. Hunter's a guy I really liked pre-draft as well. Played behind Tank Bigsby to start at Auburn, but emerged as the team's lead back in 2023, and then had a really strong 2024, over 1,200 rushing yards, 6.4 yards per carry. Had an 80th percentile speed score with the 4.44 40 time. Just a prospect I liked, and again, opportunity to, I think, again, maybe beat out Blake Corum to be the number 2 running back this year, and then maybe be the team's lead back in 2026 on a running game that we know is going to be productive.
Ooh, Jared's got big thoughts about Jarquez Hunter's future.
I love it.
What, Jacob, sounds like you have semi-big thoughts at least?
Yeah, for sure. They've talked a lot, starting all the way back in February, about wanting to kind of like emulate or at least being intrigued by what Liam Cohen did with Tampa Bay. We've seen McVay always have like a one guy backfield. But I think they might be moving more towards like splitting it up a little bit and using guys in specific stylistic fits. And so Hunter is intriguing because he comes in and has a different skill set right away as the explosive threat. I think he'll fit really well with all the duo and man gap running that they've been doing there too. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by him. And we don't know like how long they're going to do the Kyron thing or how long Kyron can hold up with this kind of workload every year. So there might be long-term upside for him to like take over at some point.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Kyron is a big second contract player, especially for the Rams. Shane, what are we doing to close out round 3?
My Mr. Irrelevant here will be Trevor Etienne, running back for the Carolina Panthers. I'm with Jared and at this range, just to start taking dart throws on these 4th round drafted running backs and see if you can hit. Jonathan Brooks, unfortunate situation, but he's probably not going to play this year. They signed Chuba Hubbard to the bigger deal to be the lead back, and Rico Dowdle, I think Trevor Etienne's basically competing with for a spot. And Etienne never the lead back for a team, either on Florida or at Georgia, but a really smooth mover. He's one player that I loved watching on film, just to get outside and be able to cut up field so quickly. The burst is there, the pass catching's there. So it wouldn't surprise me if he rises up and earns a pass catching role on an offense that I think really wants that out of the running back position and needs it. So I'll take the dart throw here.
So that's our 3-round mock draft. Again, if you're on YouTube, then you can see it on your screen. If you did pull a car over and wrote it down on a piece of paper, send us a shot of your piece of paper on X and we'll be curious to see it. Jacob, because you're the guest, I'm going to let you go first with that post 3-round sleeper. Give us somebody that we can take in the 4th or 5th round, and next year our league mates are going to be totally envious.
There's so many players. Etienne was going to be my guy because I've noticed I draft exclusively on Sleeper, and I've noticed that on Sleeper they haven't ranked like basically out of the range of drafted players. They haven't projected for like nothing, and so people forget about him, I think. And in 4-round drafts, he's almost always available, unless you have somebody sharp like Shane, like in there. There's like, oh, I remember this guy that got drafted ahead of Dylan Sampson and is like the other youngest running back in the draft. Yeah, I think he brings something that Carolina does need with the speed. They've got two guys that are just like dependable up the middle guys, but he has the speed and receiving, so he could get on the field right away. And long term, like is intriguing because he is super young. So I got sniped there. I'm gonna go with Taj Brooks. Really loved Taj Brooks' film. His data is good as well. He can do everything for an NFL team if needed. He can pass protect. He can catch the ball. He, I think, is one of, if not the best processor in the league in terms of like reading space as things develop, and that helps him as a pass blocker, but also as a runner, specifically as a man gap runner, which is exactly what Cincinnati likes to do. The Bengals are doing a lot of just like simple handoffs up the middle, out of the shotgun, and just like attacking. They've got this massive offensive line that just like pushes people back, and you have to just like find the spot and beat a guy. And I think Taj can do that. I think that he's like really set up well to do that. And it wouldn't shock me if at some point he's like the best option to just keep the offense on track. I like Chase Brown a lot. And Chase Brown obviously gives a big play aspect that Brooks doesn't. If I'm just looking at it, it's like, okay, what makes this offense work? It's the passing game, right? Like that's what it's all about. And so what you really need is just to like keep pushing defenses and like light boxes and just being able to churn out yards and put yourself in like good advantageous situations and not take losses. Like he's the high success rate kind of running back. And I could see him sneaking into a pretty big role here in year one, even if Brown doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, this team is ripe for somebody to come in and take some touches away from Chase Brown. I like Chase Brown too, but I just don't think he's going to get the kind of work share that he did late last season. I wonder if Cincinnati waiting until round 6 is a signal that Zach Moss is going to be more involved than we want him to be, especially after he got this reworked contract that basically locks him in to stay with the team this year. So we'll see, but there's opportunity for sure, whether it's Taj Brooks, Zach Moss, or whatever. Jared, who you got for a sleeper here?
There are a handful of more running backs that I am intrigued by here that I'd probably be taking if we were actually making more picks. But I want to highlight Torrey Horton, who is someone I liked pre-draft. Again, I mentioned I think he would have been getting more buzz and probably even would have gone earlier in the draft if not for the injuries that limited him to just 5 games. Last year, it was a knee and hamstring injury that knocked him out, but he was productive before going down last year, 71 yards per game, 35% yardage share. And that was following 2 straight seasons of over 1,100 receiving yards in 2022 and 2023. And I just think he gives the Seahawks that downfield receiver that they don't really have in Jackson Smith and Jigma and Cooper Kupp. I think both those guys are better on the short and intermediate stuff. I think Horton, he's a kind of a taller, lanky receiver, but he has the 4.41 speed. I think he can be, maybe it's going to be Horton and Elijah Arroyo competing for those, outside snaps for the Seahawks early on. But I think, really otherwise, besides, those guys, it's MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is like the guy that Horton is competing for snaps this season. So I think he's someone who a second half of the season, you could see him, getting starter level snaps for the Seahawks and, potentially being a pretty big part of that passing game.
Yeah, maybe even earlier because MVS has washed himself out of plenty of places so far.
Click Kubiak likes him though. Kubiak showed last year that he can make it work with MVS. I love Horton. I love the pick here. I think him and Ayamanar are the two guys where it's like you watch their film and there's database reasons to believe this as well. They're like day 2 talents, but both of them fell in the draft because of medicals. And so like I'm happy. I'm content to take shots on either one of them in round 4 where I can find them.
Shane, who's your sleeper here?
I'll take someone that's unexciting, but those round 4 running backs just draw me in. So I'm going to pick Woody Marks, running back for the Houston Texans, coming from USC. A player in his 5-year college career, 261 catches. So we're playing in PPR leagues. Give me the guy that's going to catch the ball. D'Amico Ryans talked about how that's what Woody Marks does. That's why they traded a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft to go up and get him. They want a running back that can catch the football. So if he's getting a decent shot at targets and receptions, then I think even the 4.5 40 time and the unexciting statistics I think it's worth a shot. And Marks could emerge as one of those players that, weekly, if he's getting targets, like, well, you could start him in a flex and you're going to get a couple catches and it's a safe pick with all these bye weeks. Like, I think Woody Marks could turn into that kind of player.
And at the very least, handcuff upside behind Joe Mixon, who's going to get a whole lot of work, and that means more chances to potentially get injured in what's a good offense. So even if you think Woody Marks is meh as a running back, he's going to be in a good spot if he gets on the field with the Texans. I'm going to close this out with a guy that none of you want to talk about, and it is Dillon Gabriel, a quarterback from Cleveland who should absolutely be drafted ahead of Shedeur Sanders in all of your Superflex leagues, and who has not been. I just took Dillon Gabriel in round 4 of an FFPC Superflex rookie draft this morning. 2 rounds, maybe it was 1 round after Shedeur Sanders went in that one, but I've regularly seen Sanders go in round 2 of those drafts. We have a whole video where we talk about the whole Sanders situation during the draft and Sanders versus Gabriel. So I'll keep it shorter here. I think the reason to go ahead and take a shot on Gabriel here is First of all, the reason that you're taking any Cleveland quarterback, they don't know what they're doing at quarterback yet. One of these guys is going to start. I would have to say that Joe Flacco looks like the favorite right now. Kenny Pickett's probably ahead of these rookies, but it could be anybody who emerges during the summer. Dillon Gabriel spent a long time in college starting for every one of his teams. He was a starter all along. He was productive and efficient all along. He has a strong enough arm. Basically, the only reason that he lasted to round 3 is because he's 5'11". And we don't see many quarterbacks succeed at 5'11" in the NFL, but we have seen a couple. We've got a couple playing right now, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. So it's not impossible. I'm not saying Dillon Gabriel is going to be left-handed Russell Wilson, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he's starting early in the season because he's experienced, he can run, and Cleveland did take him ahead of Shedeur Sanders. So I thought about taking him in the 3rd round. Thought it would be a little bit more interesting to leave him until the sleeper section, but I honestly think that Dillon Gabriel is a super flex sleeper that people should be grabbing basically anytime from the second half of round 3 on, who could work out quickly.
We got to get Jacob's thoughts on Sanders versus Gabriel real quick. It's been a hotly contested debate around Draft Sharks.
I don't really think about either of them. Is that okay?
That's a good answer.
It's fair, but I think this is one of those situations where it could end up being irrelevant or it could easily turn relevant.
Yeah, if I were to take a shot on somebody, it would be Gabriel late. I'm definitely not drafting Shedeur in round 3 or anything.
All right. That's all we needed. So that's our 3-round mock. That's sleepers. Jacob, thank you again for joining us. Before we close up, why don't you tell people where they can find you and what to look for?
Yeah, at JAGibbs_23 on Twitter. Search FFT Newsletter. It's good stuff. Dive into all sorts of topics, give you rankings, all that stuff as well. But I really like this off-season time because you can get into just like really deep stuff with the research on fantasy-based stuff in terms of like where's the right type of picks to be making, the archetypes of players you want to target and all that. Like, but also like digging deep into the players and giving you some fun data points you might not see elsewhere. Jared does a really good job of that as well. So like if you like that kind of analysis, that's kind of what you're getting there.
And what site do you write for, Jared?
This one.
Check out Jacob's stuff on X. Check it out in the Fantasy Football Today newsletter. Check out Jared's stuff on draftsharks.com. I agree. This is a great time of year to dig deep in the stats, to actually think about this stuff, because as we get closer to and then into the regular season, a lot of times it's just, formulaic. You're getting the projections going, you're moving on to the next week, and you just kind of, on your schedule. So we'll maximize this time. Appreciate having Jacob along with us to do this mock draft. You can find our rankings for Superflex rookie drafts and any other format on draftsharks.com right now. You can also find staff mock drafts for not just Superflex, but one quarterback, as well as our updated prospect guide on draftsharks.com. Sync your own team today to get your draft war room set and make draftsharks.com your unfair advantage.